This is Ruslan Belov, and here's another daily briefing on the situation at the front. Before we begin, a quick request. Please subscribe to the channel and be sure to hit the bell so you get notifications about new releases. YouTube routinely throttles the reach of content like this and effectively hides such videos even from subscribers, so without the bell turned on, you may simply never see the new briefings. And do leave a like, it really helps with promotion. Let's go. So the US and Iran appear to have reached a turning point. The two sides have announced a memorandum and are moving toward an agreement. We'll get into the details in a moment, but the active phase seems to be over. And what's the result? Trump immediately declared that his attention is now turning back to the situation around Russia and Ukraine, which means that before long we'll once again be treated to the whole familiar set of contradictory statements from him. From the idea that Ukraine is supposedly to blame for everything, to the notion that Ukraine should be handed tomahawks, that Russia is a paper tiger, and so on. So as they say, brace yourselves. But before we move to the front, a few words about the deal itself, since it directly affects which way Trump turns next. After 3.5 months of conflict that effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, Washington and Tehran reached an agreement on June 14th aimed at settling the standoff. The exact terms haven't been disclosed yet, but it's known that Pakistan acted as mediator, and its Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the document is to be officially signed on Friday in Switzerland. This is a memorandum of understanding, and the first step is to be the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, through which, recall, nearly a fifth of the world's oil and gas supplies pass. As of the memorandum's announcement, the strait still remained closed, but Trump has already told the New York Times that once it reopens after the Geneva signing, passage will be permanently toll-free, with no charges. The arrangement is as follows. The US lifts its naval blockade of the strait, while Iran reopens it to commercial shipping. Council on Foreign Relations, +5. As for the nuclear part, that's where it gets more interesting. It's reported that the deal includes an Iranian commitment to halt uranium enrichment and dismantle its nuclear facilities. But the length of that pause is precisely the sticking point. The US is pushing for 20 years, Iran is unwilling to go beyond 10, and the final parameters are to be worked out during a 60-day pause. Beyond that, also on the negotiating table are freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program, reconstruction and sanctions relief, and the framework of a long-term peace agreement. Council on Foreign Relations House of Commons Library. So the active phase may be behind us, but as you can see, they still have plenty left to negotiate. And that 20 versus 10 years could well drag the whole thing out. And Trump, having freed his hands on the Iranian track, will only be more eager to pivot to Russia and Ukraine. As for us, back to the front. If the previous day was mixed, the Russian army advanced nicely, but the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, also retook quite a bit, making it nearly an even day. Then the last 24 hours clearly went to the Russian army. Remember, just a few days ago, one of the briefings noted that the AFU's defense had begun to collapse rapidly and that major problems had emerged in yet another city besides Kostiantynivka, namely Lyman. And it's precisely from the Lyman direction that the loudest news of the day is coming in today. But first, the official side. Just a few days ago, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that in Lyman, the northern, central, communal, and southern districts of the city had already been taken. There's no district breakdown on the map, so let me explain schematically what's meant. The northern district in the north, accordingly. The central in the center. The communal, that's the east. The southern in the south. There's also the Zaporizhia factory district. According to the Defense Ministry, the listed districts are already fully controlled. Mopping up is still ongoing in basements here and there, but control is essentially established. Fighting, meanwhile, is underway for the Zaporizhia district and the Dacha cooperative by the lake. And now, what the objective control footage shows. Just a few days ago, the latest reliable information from the Lyman direction amounted to Russian forces entering the city from the north. Now the picture has changed dramatically. A huge swath of the city has come under control. According to fresh objective control footage, and I stress these are not bloggers' claims or one side's communiqué, A large part of the territory has been cleared, and roughly 40% of Lyman is in fact already under the control of the Russian army. It appears Russian forces have managed to advance deep into the urban area, and a sizable amount of infantry has already moved into the city. From here on, it's essentially a matter of mechanics. Once the infantry has entered and dug in, it's enough to build up a certain amount of personnel. And one can say the city's fate is, by and large, already sealed. I wouldn't be surprised if Lyman falls around the same time as Kostiantynivka, and here's the telling part. Lyman, as you know, is held by the elite Azov brigade, but even their strength, it seems, is starting to run short. Otherwise, it's hard to explain how, in such a short span, the AFU has begun losing such large parts of the city. The Ukrainian army has serious infantry problems as it is, and Lyman only underscores that. Breaking it down by district, in the central, for instance, along Slobozhanska Street, advances had been recorded earlier as well. In the communal, the wooded areas east of the city have been cleared, along with the cemetery grounds, and Sosnova and Kavoyna streets have been taken. The hardest so far is the southern district with its high-rise housing. The least objective control footage has come from there. But given the pace at which the defense is crumbling, the conclusion is obvious. The AFU will not hold Lyman through the summer. It's hard to imagine them lasting another 2.5 months at such rates of decline, and that's exactly how much of the summer campaign lies ahead. On the Sloviansk direction, there's no news. Things have gone a bit quiet here. The reasons are clear. The main forces of the Yug, South grouping, are currently concentrated on the assault of Kostiantynivka, on finishing off that city, so the pace here has dropped. They've also gotten bogged down at Rye-Oleksandrivka, but that was expected and even forecast. Rye-Oleksandrivka is the last fortified point before Mykolaiivka, and the AFU will cling to it, since losing it opens the road to Mykolaiivka. As for Kostiantynivka, there's no news from the city itself yet. Fighting continues in the area of Novoselivka and in the eastern part of the city. The news instead came from the flank, the western one, to be precise. Here they've finally cracked a difficult defensive node in the form of the village of Dova Balka. The fighting for it dragged on a long time, more than a month and a half, but now the western flank is more or less stable. Stepanivka is under control, Dovha Balka is under control, Roskishna is under control. Now Mykolaipilia needs to be taken and the area mopped up. And then the western flank will become practically impregnable. What else was there? In the area of Novoalexandrivka, or rather just east of the village, Russian forces advanced 500 meters through the tree lines. Plus, in Sumy region, objective control footage arrived showing an advance in Kondrativka. The whole village hasn't been finished off yet, but there's progress in the settlement, and decent chances it'll be wrapped up by the end of the month. Now let's shift to the western Zaporizhia direction, where the situation for Russian units is developing in a worrying way. In the Kamianska area, the trend toward a deteriorating situation is not only holding, but intensifying. Evidence has surfaced online that the AFU is building up its presence in the east of Stepnohirsk and occupying new positions to the southeast of the city. Ukrainian units have tried to seize several strongpoints along the Kamianske-Stepov line, and footage of strikes on these tree lines has appeared more than once. This indicates that the AFU retains the ability to operate south of the Stepnohirsk-Pavlivka line, where fighting continues over small strongpoints in the tree lines. Moreover, there's been no evidence of a Russian presence in Pavlivka and its surroundings for quite some time now, and with the fighting shifting south, Ukrainian units are massing there without much difficulty. That said, the AFU's advance to the Kamianske-Stepov-Sherbaki line didn't happen all at once, but was the product of prolonged fighting dating back to this spring. And as Ukrainian forces occupy new lines around Stepnohirsk, further attacks on Plavny and Kamianska are quite likely. In effect, Russian units on this direction have already lost almost all of their territorial gains since the spring of 2025, when the offensive here began. Parallel, in the Orikhiv area, the situation is unchanged for now. Positional fighting continues on the approaches to Novoandreivka, Novodanilivka, and Malatokmachka. No shifts in zones of control are observed here, though there are conflicting reports of advances by both Russian forces and the AFU. An added complication for Russian units is that Ukrainian forces have for weeks now been systematically striking Kostiantynivka, Enerhodar, and other settlements around the Zaporizhia NPP. Overall, given the problems caused by Ukrainian strikes on Russian logistics, the situation here remains tense. That doesn't mean the Ukrainian side is about to achieve some massive breakthrough. Russian forces still have enough time to react and contain the risks. The only question is a sober assessment of the real situation, with which there have at times been remarkable oddities on this direction. Meanwhile, Ukraine is facing a growing shortage of American Patriot air defense missiles amid rising intensity of Russian ballistic strikes, the New York Times reports. According to the paper, over the past weeks, Russia has ramped up its strikes, exploiting one of the main weak points of Ukrainian air defense, the shortage of Patriot interceptors, and Western deliveries simply aren't keeping up with the sharply increased number of Russian missiles. As a representative of Ukraine's Air Force, Colonel Yuri Inat vividly put it to the paper, the goalkeeper is standing in the net when suddenly a dozen balls fly at him at once. He can't catch them all. At the same time, Ukraine intends to ask its Western partners for an additional $20 billion. Politico reports, citing a senior representative of the Ukrainian defense establishment. The request is to be made on June 18th at the next meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, also known as the Ramstein format, where allies coordinate financial and military aid to Kyiv. According to the outlet, the matter was already raised by Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov in talks with representatives of Norway, Sweden, Germany, and Canada. Each ally is being asked to provide between $2 and $6 billion in direct aid or as a loan. The funds are to be directed towards strengthening air defense, purchasing drones, ammunition, electronic warfare assets, long-range weaponry, and direct orders from Ukrainian defense enterprises. Part of the aid, Politico reports, will go toward procuring weapons under the so-called priority list of Ukraine's needs, a NATO mechanism allowing allies to centrally purchase arms for Kyiv from American manufacturers. Along with this, the chair of the Federation Council, Valentina Matvienko, stated that the issue of a political settlement of the conflict in Ukraine has no prospects for progress under the current international climate. She emphasized that Russia has always sought and continues to seek diplomatic resolutions to disputes and conflicts, but only on the condition of reliably ensuring its own security and legitimate interests. In her words, no serious preconditions for a political settlement are visible yet, unfortunately. Western countries are not interested in the development of a sovereign and independent Russia, while the country itself faces attempts at escalation by NATO states. Matvienko also noted that Russia consistently advocates for the formation of a multipolar world and the development of international relations on the basis of the sovereign equality of states. To sum up the past day, one settlement and 23.5 square kilometers of territory came under the control of the Russian army, while the AFU made no advances over the day, so it was a very good day indeed. On the whole, the summer campaign so far lags behind last year's in terms of territory taken, but in terms of cities captured, the situation is markedly better. Across the entire previous summer campaign, from May to September, only a single Chasiv Yar was taken, whereas this year it's clearly already shaping up to be two, and far larger, cities, Kostiantynivka and Lyman. And who knows, maybe something else will start to crumble for the AFU. That's all on the situation at the front for today. Write in the comments what you think about all this. If this briefing was useful, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the new releases. See you in the next one.